Welcome to Part 3, Business Ethics, Chapter 7, in which we are looking at what employees owe employers ethically. This is the online home of our textbook, and whenever you want to navigate it, you can click on the table of contents there, scroll down, and then we will see, we can click right on Chapter 7, in which it'll always ask you if you want to order a print copy, or you can just look at everything online. So we remember that the first section of this is, what does it mean to have loyalty to your employer? The definitions of this have changed in the United States dramatically over the last 100 years, and I'm sure before then as well, in which at the beginning you would have been expected to be loyal to your company for perhaps your entire working career. And now you might have 4 different jobs in the first 10 years of your career. Some of this is economic pressure. If your company is not paying you enough to meet your needs, your basic needs, your bills, your housing, your food, let alone saving for retirement, you are going to be incentivized to look for other jobs. So much so that moonlighting, meaning finding another job in the off hours of your main job, has its own section on many career websites. And here we go, the first text box. And here it comes to the reason why I want to do this. This week's assignment is going to be picking 2 of these boxes and answering the questions below. On the syllabus, it is a group assignment, but I did not realize that it was a shortened week. There were Monday, Wednesday schedules switching out, so I don't want to have an assignment that takes a longer amount of time. I want you to be able to sit down and finish it on the schedule that you choose. So, okay. Imagine that a colleague comes to you and says that they're thinking of leaving for a competing company. What sort of advice would you give to them? What would you tell them that they should think about? Why are they deciding to leave? Why would they stay? What could the company do to keep them there? Versus, is there anything that the company could do to actually keep them there? We get a little bit of a mention that some of these outside perks might be offered, like having a nice cafeteria or team building activities, but that is rarely, if ever, going to actually retain someone's employment. Whereas a direct route to promotion and an increased salary is more likely to retain someone. So if you're thinking about how you might talk to your colleague for the pros and the cons of them leaving versus staying, I would want you to think about what questions you would ask them by thinking about all the jobs that you've had. What was important to you? The experience that you were getting, the salary. Were you treated as a real contributor to the team's goals and projects, or were you just treated like a workhorse, a number, someone who could be exchanged with anybody else and still nothing would matter? How do all these things add up to create loyalty or disloyalty to a particular company? Now here's a case from the real world. So I had mentioned in our previous videos that non-compete agreements had historically been used for management level employees and above, because they're the ones that had the company secrets that might adversely affect business when they jump over to a competitor. But in the last 10, 20 years, companies started making people sign non-compete agreements that were lower level workers, like people who made the food at fast food chains. And you can see how this would just really destroy someone who is living paycheck to paycheck. So they work at something like Jimmy John's, a pizza company, saying that they can no longer work at any pizza companies for X number of months or years within X number of miles of a Jimmy John's. It's a nationwide chain, so that means they're not going to be able to work at a pizza company if they leave, or, oh, I was wrong anyway. It's not a pizza company. Submarine Hero type deli style pita or wrapped or rolled sandwiches. That's a very wide area. That's almost no fast food places that they'd be able to go to. And that's what they mean by saying it's punitive. You're punishing your workers for leaving. And these are workers that may need to jump ship to make enough money to survive. So New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman did an investigation into which kind of prompted Jimmy John's to stop doing this. And if you decided to look at this text box, I would want you to ask yourself, is there a non-punishing reason that a company might make a lower level employee sign a non-compete agreement? Here we go to section 2. Loyalty to the brand and its customers. We talked a little bit about the Cisco one. We can talk more to a case from the real world. So this one's a little more of a personalized case study about one particular employee, Kathy Fryman. So her job title anyway, was custodian of a particular school. So we would think of them as the janitor, the person that cleans up and maintains the environment of a school. But she worked at one school for 3 decades, and she wasn't just taking care of the building, our book tells us, also the people inside. She did all the maintenance work, but she showed concern for students. She bought things using her own money for students that couldn't necessarily afford something that they needed. This is a quote from the superintendent, just has a unique way of making others feel nurtured, comforted, and cared for. And when asked, the employee herself said, I need to be doing something for someone. So if you wanted to look at this as part of your weekly work, your homework, you'd want to say, well, how do companies cultivate this kind of loyalty and extraordinary behavior? Should they? Or is it just a quirk of personality? So sometimes you're going to run into people who are above and beyond. They're above average, selfless, not selfish, selfless. They want to help other people. They're outwardly focused. They're altruistic. And is this something that you can instill in your employees? If so, how? With financial incentives? With less tangible lifestyle incentives? If you run into an employee like this, how should they be rewarded? Sometimes cynical people online will say, well, if you're excellent at your job, you're going to get rewarded with more work. And that would be the opposite of what this text box is trying to convey, that you might find a way to reward this kind of behavior for its own sake instead of punishing it with more work. How far can you go when you are supposed to be loyal to the brand and its customers? Where does the line stop? And here, this one might be a little bit more clear cut. The customer is not always right when it comes to assault, whether it is sexual harassment or actual physical assault. Here we go. At an independently owned Pizza Hut franchise in Oklahoma, 2 regular customers made sexually offensive remarks to a female employee. Then she went and she said to her boss, I don't want to serve these people ever again. They came in again, and her boss made her serve them again, and with which she was physically assaulted. She sued. The jury was in her favor, $360,000, and the appeals court upheld the judgment. So we might easily say physical assault crosses the line, but when you back it up, how far does it go? How much do you owe to your customers if you are a customer-facing business? Where does the line between safeguarding the environment of the employees clash up with making sure the customer's goals are met? Section 7.3, positive work atmosphere. This is an interesting one, even if you don't think about personality tests. You can just think about having two experts in a department that you personally manage. You need both of them to work on the projects of your company and your specific department. They're both pleasant enough people when you work with them one-on-one, but they absolutely do not get together with one another. What can you do? You can't force people to like one another. So how do you create a positive work atmosphere for everyone involved? And if you chose this, I would want you to sit down and think about what options you could do, just like it asks here, to foster a cooperative working department, relationships in your department with people that clearly do not get along. You could think about ExxonMobil's code of conduct and answer these questions. So in each section, you can see that there are generally two text boxes within which you can decide which ones to respond to, because I'm asking you this week to respond to two. One paragraph, give or take, for each text box. Financial integrity, we get examples of insider trading and fiduciary duty. Remember, you have fiduciary duty when you are using other people's money to make decisions. And we get to learn here that one of the most famous cases of insider trading was at Drexel Burnham Lambert. In the 1980s, you might be aware of some of the stereotypes of how business worked. Greed is good, and there were hostile corporate takeovers, and the bottom line was making more money for your company no matter what. But of course, insider trading was still illegal. The SEC became suspicious, discovering a huge bank account from Ivan Boesky. So an investor who basically gambled with other people's money on corporate takeovers, and when he won, he made a whole lot of money. But he wasn't really just gambling on corporate takeovers and buying stock based on who he thought would win these corporate debates or duels. He was actually paying people within the companies themselves to make sure the decisions went the way he wanted to. So at the time, the penalties were the most severe ever when they were caught. Milken paid, let's see here, a grand total of $1.1 billion and 10 years in prison. Boesky, 3.5 years, 100 million, all of them forced to never work in securities, no trading for the rest of their lives. Now, the question for you with this case study is, what happens when you want to prevent something like this from happening? Can you? Does a code of conduct do anything? Does modeling the appropriate ethical behavior do anything? What would be your suggestion on handling the temptations of insider trading and making massive fortunes based on knowledge that you have that the general public does not. And as a final sort of question, do you think something like this happening now, would it be treated differently? Do you think the people would be fined as much? Do you think there would be as much public outcry? And why or why not? This one's a really interesting one, which shows how tricky ethical questions can be. Assume you're a partner in a successful computer consulting company. You're bidding for a contract with a large insurance company. So you want your company to provide the software for this insurance company. Your chief competition has always in the past offered similar prices and similar services to your company. You guys just hired somebody, however, who has insider information about your competitive rival company. They are unveiling a whole new pricing scheme and type of software for this particular bid. This is insider knowledge. You can change up everything in your company to undercut this new knowledge that you have and win the contract. Nobody was in violation of anything. If you don't win this contract, your employees are going to suffer. They're going to make less money. Maybe your firm is going to be near bankruptcy. What would you do? Would you do the undercutting with the inside information? Or would you inform everybody of the knowledge that you came to that was supposed to be secret? Here is a case study about individual people complaining about their employer online. So remember that some kinds of complaints are protected, as in when 2 or more employees are specifically discussing their pay. But this person just went onto glassdoor.com, which is a place you can go describing the work atmosphere of many different companies, saying that the management was biased against him because he needed specific schedules for surgeries for transitioning medically. And he was fired. He brought a lawsuit saying it was discrimination, but the lawsuit was dismissed because it was not collective bargaining action, just personalized complaining that could hurt the company and its branding. So do you have an ethical and legal obligation to stop yourself from bad-mouthing your boss? Should you? And is there any sort of reason why a company might not sanction this, might be open to these kinds of criticisms from their employees? Is there ever a benefit to getting individual kinds of criticism? And then the final box that you could choose is a biggie, Enron. I don't know how much you've heard of this in your college career or from history class or anything like that. It is a massive corporate fraud case, all instituted by a whistleblower. Sharon Watkins discovered the fraud that the company was engaging within, went to the boss first, so did all the right things, did not do any sort of whistleblowing before they tried to resolve the problem internally. She was ignored multiple times, and she didn't go straight to the government, which is how the traditional whistleblowing route goes. She went to the media instead, so had no protections from the government, and now is considered to be a respected individual that stands up for integrity, but at the time was destroyed daily in the media. So here would the questions you would be looking at if you looked at this. Did Watkins owe an ethical duty to Enron, its shareholders, or to the investing public, or not? And how big of a price is it fair to ask a whistleblowing employee to pay? This one's pretty cool too, of a multiple time whistleblower, but I'll leave that one to you. You can choose it if you so are interested. Other than that, please let me know if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, and have a great week. See you next week.